There is an endless sea of podcasts about entrepreneurship. Talking about it, but not living it. We live it every day. This is Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle, talking about real estate investing, but also encompassing general subjects in regards to owning small to medium-sized businesses. And of course, all the struggles that business owners must overcome to be successful. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. And this is Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle.
Welcome back to Inside the Wolf's Den with your hosts, Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. How's it going, Shawn?
Doing great. I was working on my posture, so I was trying to sit better to help my back. So,
it's good.
It's good.
We both
it's
do
hard.
work on our posture a little bit.
Yeah. So it's I'm working on it. I got to be more mentally aware of it.
Yes.
So. Just like everything in life, you got to be aware. So
and
I'm trying to be.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that today. So that's good. That's good. You're going to lead right into this episode.
Right in. So today we're going to be talking about setting yourself apart, right? How do you set yourself apart from the competition? What things you can do in your business to move the needle, create a competitive edge, create a winning team, and create a legacy.
Yeah. So I mean, it would. So there's something that I think why this sparked this episode or this podcast was, we got back from an RPM conference.
Yes.
And it wasn't only an RPM, it was also Mr. Rooter and all the other brands.
The Neighborly brands.
That Neighborly owns. And so it was interesting. It was 2,500 different business owners across the country. And it was good to just, share ideas and struggles that everybody's going through. And we had a great guest speaker, and it was just a great week, and it got a little bit long, but it was a great week for us, and we learned a lot, and I got to share, and so it was awesome. But so a takeaway was, there's some struggles I think everybody's going through, and we wanted to share kind of some of the things that has been moving the needle for us and been helping in our businesses separate us from the competition. Yeah. And I think you got to focus on, what can I do within my business? What can I control? And then what are those things? And then, that's going to separate me. And there's a lot of forces out there that you just can't control, but there are things within your business that you can control that will move the needle. And so we just want to share those. And we're not, trust me, as we go through all this might be like, whoa, like I'm not even close to there. I can't even imagine putting all this together. And this didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, and that's the point that I kind of want to make too, is that it doesn't happen overnight. And where you're at in your business today isn't where you're going to be at in 2 years, 3 years, down the road. I remember you and I, when we first started, you and I were doing everything, right? And so it's going to be different for everybody. And the key is you just got to start somewhere and be consistent with it and grow from there.
Yeah. And so I'm just going to go right into it. So one of the first things, and something I want to mention, it's the takeaway from the conference as well, was I just feel like a lot of people, especially like in the franchise world, they think that there is a magic pill or a magic bullet or a magic something that's going to just, that somebody's holding, or like some secretive competitive edge and all that. It's like, and truth be told, there's no really secret sauce, there and there really isn't. And then when they buy a franchise, they think like
everything's going to be right there for them.
Complete box. I'm just going to open my doors and people are going to come running in and just going to want to spend all the money in the world. And it just doesn't happen that way.
I mean, that would be nice, but it's not reality. I agree with that. I mean, I think that, it takes hard work, and consistency and discipline, just like anything, to be successful.
Hard work. And I think that's it. One of the biggest things you can do to separate yourself is just work harder than everybody else. And that's not what everybody wants to hear. Everybody, you hear this 4-hour work week and work smarter, not harder. And yes, there's all that's true. And you can, yes. And also you can work extremely hard and not get very far as well. And I get that side of it. But for the most part, if you're doing the right thing, you have the right strategy, most things you can accomplish and separate yourself by just working harder than others. Yeah. And so like what I want to get out with this was, in the conference, we were all in a mini, like a breakout room with similar sized companies as ours. And, everybody's struggling with hiring right now. It's across the board, across the country, everybody is struggling with hiring. And so it came up, and they were sharing some best practices and all that. And people were like complaining that, I place the ads, I do this, I get horrible candidates, or I don't get any candidates. And it was just like, and it's like, wait a minute, like, and some of the couple of people in the room that are having success, if you really listen to them, they were spending almost a third of their time on just hiring. So yes, they might, whatever business you're in, you might make widgets, you might perform a service like property management service or Mr. Rooter or whatever, plumbing services. You have a service you do. Or you make a widget. You have all your day-to-day operations fulfilling those services or making that widget. But then you're also spending a third of your time on just hiring and training and coaching, and
it takes focus. It takes a lot of work and focus on it, right? And it doesn't ever stop either. No. I mean, when it comes to hiring, you're always hiring. You go out to a restaurant, you should be thinking in your head, oh, could this be a good candidate for my business, right?
Yeah. Everywhere you go, if you get excellent service, or you just see a rock star in another industry, or you see you just see talent out there, or even in maybe your competitors or whatever, like, don't like plant the seed. Exactly. And you don't know, or go to networking events, and it's maybe not to gain business. It might be to gain references from future employees. There's all sorts of, different scenarios where people just cross your paths and they end up being terrific candidates, and you don't know. We've done a lot of recruiting over the years where you met somebody, you're like, wow, that person would be awesome to have in our organization. And you just plant the seeds. Say, I don't know where you'd fit. I don't know. But hey, I would love to just sit down and take you to lunch.
There's several people in our organization right now where we've met out and about, at resorts or whatever, in the pool, talking business and, synergy. And man, this would be a great candidate.
Correct. And so you just never know. But again, it goes back to hard work, always be working it. And I what's struggling with when people are looking at hiring was the average company there was spending at most probably 30 minutes a week on hiring.
Right.
And it's like, well, no wonder why you're getting the results you're getting. Yeah. You're going to have to spend a lot more time than that, or hire an HR department or fractional HR department that's going to spend a lot more time than that, or hire an HR employee that's going to spend all that time, because you need to put a lot of energy and effort into if you're going to do it well and do it.
Right. It's not just about spending money on the ad. I mean, I don't know how many people I talk to that, I've been spending like $1,500 a month on ad. Well, maybe if it's not working, then you should probably do something else.
Yeah. And the next point we want to make, if you want to set yourself apart, is consistency. And so in anything, whether it be investing, whether it be business, consistency is a key. Why do we like Amazon so much? Is because and maybe you could say, well, lately, but I think a lot of that has to do with the shipping and some of the other things that are causing some things in their business to change a little bit. But for the most part, you order it 2 days later, you get it.
It arrives.
It's very consistent. It's a very simple and easy process to order online. It's very consistent. It's just a flow. McDonald's, why have they been? Because it's just consistent. You're going to get the same
Chick-fil-A.
hamburger. Yeah, all of those. You get a very consistent experience throughout the whole process. And so that's something I know in our business that we strive for. And trust me, guys, we're like way far away from being perfect in this, because we want our clients to experience that consistent effort and experience all the time. So anytime they call us in our caller phone, they're going to get that same experience. And hopefully it's not a bad consistent effort, but hopefully it's a good experience and it's consistent. Yeah,
I agree.
So whatever you can do, look at your business and make sure you're providing a consistent process and consistent experience for your client, because that's going to really pay off in the future. Another thing that we really try to do is work on our people again. And I think if you're going to separate yourself from the competition, you got to come down to having great people on your team.
Yeah, and I think your team is really going to get you to that next level, right? I mean, it's no longer the Shawn and Joni show. Yeah. It's our team, and we trust our team to make the decisions that they make. And yeah, they may fail, but it's your team that's going to get you to the next level. Correct.
And this is something that, again, it never ends. You're never done with it. And again, it takes consistent hard work effort to keep training, keep recruiting, to find those A players and to keep building. I mean, a lot of people ask, you know, at the end, when we that takeaway from the conference, we got back and we're like, a lot of people were just like, how do you guys keep doing it? How do you guys run all these businesses? How do you keep growing? How do you keep performing? I don't know when you guys sleep. I don't know how you guys look like.
It's not us. I can say I do everything. I'm amazing. I'm Wonder Woman, you know, but no, it's not. It's our team.
And I keep telling them, it's my number one. That's my first thing I say is that, guys, it comes down to your team. We have a great team. We have great people. We have great leadership. They're the ones that are making it happen. They're the ones that, you know, take ownership of their departments. They're the ones that take ownership of growing the company. And so, but, you know, we had to find those people over time. We made a lot of mistakes over the years with hiring poor performers and then keeping them too long, and then the headaches and the problems they can cause in your organization. So, but once you find those people, it's keep growing them, keep elevating them, and keep giving them the resources they need. So, again, A players, you know, you should always be looking to either move your B players to A players, and moving your people up your organization. And if you have the opportunity to get A players, it makes a huge difference within your organization. Yeah. We have something that we did a couple years ago was, go back to the podcast where we did and talked about scaling up. We'll put it in the show notes, which episode that was, but we did a whole episode on scaling up. And when we went through that whole experience and started implementation, which is very similar to EOS. If you guys are familiar with that. This is vital. So I would highly recommend you guys either read the book Traction, which goes over the EOS, which is the Entrepreneur Operating System, and just a way to run your business, whether it's meeting schedules, financials, just a whole way to look at running your business and how to operate it. And then also another one that's very similar to EOS is scaling up. Right. And so one of those two you should be implementing. And that's made a huge difference.
And that's really how we got started with our leadership team and, implementing the leadership team in our daily huddles, which we'll go into, and a lot of the stuff that we do was through scaling up, which EOS is very similar to that.
Correct. And also part of that process, we developed our core values.
And I think that's extremely important. I mean, does your company have core values, and does your employees live by those core values? And do
you hire by those core values? Yeah. And there's, again, all of that is encompassed into finding the right people on your team, and because number one, you should always be looking. Number one, can they do the job? Yes, but more importantly, are they the right fit for your team?
Right. And if they fit your company and culture.
Yeah. And then if they're the right talent and the right motives and the right energy and the right drive, and they can get by, you can find a place for them, but that's the right seat that can be found. But it comes more importantly is finding the right people for your culture, who you are, and we talked about this many times. We have a very gritty, tough group, and there's people that they'll weed themselves out. They're not. If they can't handle the pressure and the stress and sometimes that this business brings, they just can't take it and they have to leave. And there's nothing wrong with that, and no hard feelings. It's just not part of our company.
I know culture. A lot of times when you're interviewing, a lot of them like to put on the mask that they do have that. Like how do you recognize that if they fit your company and culture?
So you can develop questions around your core values, and I recommend you do this. So I recommend taking your core values and then start formulating questions that will lead to answers to find out if they fit your core values. So you might talk about, so one of ours is we appreciate challenges and the results of overcoming them. And I know that's a big one of ours. Because we truly, we get hit with hurricanes, and we get hit with the pipe freeze, and we have 350 pipes that bust in our house. It causes a lot of stress and pressure on people. So, our A players will step up and look at that as like, hey, this is a challenge. I'm going to accept it. How can we shift our systems and processes to handle this kind of workflow. How are we going to, what resources do we need? What vendors do we need? All that. And they'll step up to it. And it just, if they got to work late, so be it, that we're going to get through this, and they step up to the challenge, where other people just like bail and almost freeze or almost panic. And so,
or make an excuse why they can't.
So I would ask questions, maybe like, hey, tell me about a recent challenge that you went through and how did you overcome that? Or, something along those lines when you're interviewing to find out, see if they have something, or have you, tell us about the most difficult situation that you've gone through in your life. And and it might be getting too personal there, but see if it's like, I don't know. I was going to say something. I got to watch what I say. But, if it's something like minor, like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, those are great. And I also think, too, is like letting some of the employees, your staff, interview them as well, right? Because ultimately, they're the ones that are going to be working with them. So you'll know if they fit your culture just by your employees also interviewing them.
Correct. And then taking the next step is accountability and a sense of ownership. So with your A players, one of the things with scaling up in EOS is you set a BHAG. So you set like a big, hairy, audacious goal way down the road that almost looks unattainable, but it points you in the direction of where you want to head your company. And that's where the visionaries come up with, and that's where they really are pointing you. And then you kind of put lanes, so to speak. So imagine like you got this big, hairy goal down the road, and then you got like lanes of it, like if you're driving a car, and you got curbs on each side. And so like kind of, like when you're driving monster cars or you go to like a Disneyland and you can't get out of it keeps you in the curbs, between the curbs. And so you can't go too far, but you can go kind of far to the right. And then, but if you look at it, you're still headed forward. You might drift a little bit to right or left, but you're still headed to that big. And that's what you're really setting up, with these systems or with scaling up or EOS is you're setting the vision, you're setting the strategy, where you're headed, and then you're setting lanes that you stick. Now the company can drift to the right to maybe do this, but then drift to the left for this whatever accomplishing, but they're all headed towards that same direction. And that's kind of where you want to establish within your organization. So we have some big goals, within each organization, and then our team, gets rocks each quarter and gets goals each year that will drive us to that ultimate goal in 25 years down the road.
You talked about the vision, and I think that's important for our listeners to hear because, I think you and I as visionaries, like we have to also make sure that our team, gets that vision and is behind that vision, because ultimately our leadership team is going to bring that to the rest of their team.
Correct.
So
and bring it to reality.
Right.
Yeah. We set the vision and we set it with them, but then also, ultimately it's our business and where we're headed, but it's something that we can get behind all together. And what we do is usually, something that I recommend to all the listeners is ask questions. As a leader, you need to get good at asking the right questions and asking questions that will get people to think, and a lot of times you can ask a question to get to the answer or direction. So you might have like a scenario where you want to head a certain direction, right? But you want them to get buy-in, and so you don't want to just come in and be like, hey, we're going this, we're doing this. I don't care, take it or leave it. That's what we're doing. And there's people that operate that way, and that's their business, and they have the right to do that. But if you want your team to get around it, take ownership, and you can start asking questions of, hey, what do you think about this? Or if we did this, do you guys see any issues? And all of a sudden they start formulating their own answers to where you want to head. And then you're like, that's a great idea. Now,
I think it's all part of growing as a leader, though, because I think, I myself am guilty of doing that a lot of times, right? Like it's I want to tell them where I want to go.
Yeah.
But I agree. It's ask more questions, but I think it's all just growing as a leader.
Yeah. And so as far as that accountability and sense of ownership, so we set the vision, we set our lanes of where the team can work within, and then we are headed towards there. But, we also set key performance indicators that will help us. As a team or as a leadership team, we set those indicators so we know what metrics do we need to hit in order to keep driving us closer and closer to that big, hairy, audacious goal. So, we have KPIs in each one of our organizations. We go over those every week as an organization, so we know where, and it's with everybody, so everybody knows where everybody's at. As part of scaling up, there's different color codes. So there's there's red.
So red, yellow, and green.
And then super green.
Super green.
So if you're red, you're obviously not hitting your goals. If you're yellow, you're getting closer. And if you're green, you hit it. And if you're super green, you're just knocking
rock star. But with that, though, I think it's important that, you take some time to really craft what your key performance indicators should look like. Because it's, obviously it's different for every business. And you want to make sure that you're measuring the right information, to hold your staff accountable.
Correct. And then along those lines, our former COO had been helping us do this, and we're continuing it. I'm speaking to us, so like you can understand that we do a lot of this. We're not perfect in all of this, and we're getting better and better. But we had for years kind of almost set and this is Joni and I's fault, on the accountability part, was we had, how do I describe it, Joni? We had set a culture of, I don't want to say entitlement, but there's another word for it. And we were shifting to more of a performance-driven culture, because I think a merit-based culture.
For example, if you're here at the company, say 10 years, like you should have kind of, first, if there's a new position open, you should have first dibs to that position, right? Or
just salaries go up just because you've been here a year, your salary goes up and all that kind of stuff. And there's some importance to, especially if but we wanted to change to a more performance-driven culture. So rather than, have your raises and additional, raises, bonuses, have it be, yes, still pay well, as far as the base salaries, but also on top, start driving salaries or bonuses or to performance
based on performance.
Yeah. So like you hit certain metrics, we'll help you, and we'll set those metrics and help you attain those metrics. But then, if we hit them, because then everybody wins. The company wins in those cases because you're hitting those metrics. The employee wins because they're getting those metrics and bonuses. So it's a winning culture, but it also creates, at the same time, just because you're here a year doesn't mean you're going to get a raise. Right. It means that you had to move the needle, and that helps, because that helps us grow. That helps it because we're a growing business, and it helps us hit higher benchmarks that we just make more. And like I love the kind of like an example of this would be like in Mr. Rooter, we have plumbing technicians, and they are commission driven, so they get a percentage of everything they sell. And so, why I love that way of building that company is because each van and each technician is their own business. It's their own little entrepreneur business. And so it's up to them. We'll provide the heavy equipment, the tools, the vans, the leads, but it's up to them to sell and perform on that client. And it makes them act more as a business owner, and they're going to go in there and assess the whole home and do the 14-step system and go for the whole home evaluation and look at everything. And because the more they can show the homeowner where they can add value, the more they make, and the more the company makes.
Right.
And so it's metrics like those that I think, as you change over, you start to change your culture. And I think a lot of the younger people in this generations are used to that anyway. And maybe not, but it's not an entitled. It's hey, I'm in control of my own destiny, and I can make more.
Yeah, and I think one important I want to make is that it's important to gauge like having the quarterly reviews, with your staff, because that will help you gauge like where they're at, right? Do they want to move up in the company? Like, what are their goals?
Yeah.
Right. And as our leaders, they're starting to do that more with our staff to know, okay, like let's move them up. Their goals, they want to be, sales manager, whatever the case may be is. Yeah. But I think that's how you can help them grow in the company as well.
That's a great point. And I think that's, again, we're speaking to you as if, of all the challenges and everything we go through just in the last year. When we hired the fractional HR company, that's one thing they've really been instilling in us and that's where, Joni and I as leaders and even our leaders that we've in the past, we didn't do a great job of onboarding new employees. We didn't do great at the 30, 60, 90-day reviews, and then having quarterly reviews after that. It's so imperative. And we would get all the time feedback from our employees hey, I'm looking for feedback. I'm looking for how, and we're
and they want the feedback.
Yeah, we didn't know how to
the feedback.
And we didn't do it unless there was a problem,
right.
Unless they were doing bad, they didn't get any feedback, or if they did, and that's not the best way to do it. Or they only got feedback if they were, got a raise or promotion. They need that content, and that you should be doing that to raise the bar and setting the expectation and get to know your employees, what's their goals, what's their dreams, what's their ambitions, and then making sure that setting them up for success. So that was something we did poorly in the past, and that's what we're learning from. And then also when they leave, doing an exit interview and finding out hey, where did we fail? Why are you leaving? Did
we put too much work on them? Why are they not happy?
Yeah. And so it's amazing. Almost all of this revolves around people, and that's what's setting yourself up from the competition. As you can see, there's no magic sauce. It's how to find, manage, motivate, and elevate, staff is really what it comes down to separate yourself. And I think that comes down to you as the founders or the owners. It really that gets put on your shoulders, and it's hard because you are so busy running your business and cranking it out, and you got so many fires on a day-to-day basis that the last thing you can want to think about is how do I hire, train, motivate better. But that's your job.
It is, and you have to prioritize. I know that you and I don't do it day to day anymore. Our team does, but it's leading that team.
Yeah, and something I think you did it well this morning. As a leader, I think you should walk the halls every day. If you have and if you're remote, I'm sure you can just touch base with your team every day. But you should get to know your staff and walk by leading, I think is what or lead by walking. Did I say that right? Go say good morning to everybody. Find out how their weekend was. Find out how their week's going. Where can you support them? And just get to know them and get to get on one-on-one basis with them.
Absolutely.
Something else I put on here. That's really moved the needle for us. And I think in any business, it's so crucial. And again, it's something that often gets overlooked because we don't have time for it. And it's something that gets put on at the end of a to-do list is know your numbers. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have it all down and you're dialed in. But over the years in the past, we did poorly on this. So when it came to marketing, we would just spend money and whatever it generated, great. And it was all by gut. It was all driven by gut. That month seemed pretty good. We got a lot of leads. That must have worked. Another month's what's wrong? We didn't get any calls. But we didn't know anything. We didn't know how many leads were generated, how many conversions we had, what was our cost per lead. And so I think you as a business owner, need to have this from the very beginning. It's much easier if you're smaller, is to know your cost per lead and your cost per contract and which marketing channels are working, where are you spending the money, and what are the results you're getting from those marketing channels. Right.
And with that, I think it's important that, everyone has a CRM that they're working out of, so you can track all that. That's the easy way to track everything.
Correct. And for us, it took getting the right person in that seat for that loves to do that for whatever reason. Numbers. Loves to track all that and to see the results and can analyze it. And that dramatically helped us. And just seeing all the numbers and where we're headed, because it lets you make pivots. It lets you make moves rather than dealing with just on your gut instinct, which might work at the very beginning when you're really small, but as you get bigger, it's much harder to make those decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, you can quickly find out if the marketing's working, and maybe you need to shut down certain channels because it wasn't as, profitable or bringing in as many leads as you thought it was.
And things change so much. And like Brett, we have this conversation all the time, especially when it comes to like PPC providers. If you're using one, it's like at the beginning, it's like, great, everything's performing well. And they have to keep generating new business. And sometimes they just set it and forget it. And until you're complaining that you're not getting leads, or they start looking into it and like, oh, we need to update this or update this keyword. And some are great on it. But I think it's one of those things that you just constantly have to see and track and work. And sometimes
an audit, to make sure that nothing's changed. And
then because the next step is your sales and your closing. So like that's the next step, because what's the number one complaint from a sales agent if they're not?
There's not enough leads coming in.
Yeah, it's like
I've got that all the time.
And if you don't know like your numbers, if you don't know like, hey, you got the same amount of leads as you got last week, or the same amount of leads you got last month, you can't tell them. You can just like, okay, well maybe you don't know, and so you're just kind of guessing unless you know those numbers. But there's many cases where it's actually a conversion issue.
Right.
So.
I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, like. We may have had double the amount of leads, but our sales guys weren't converting those leads. Well, it's a conversion problem, not a lead problem.
Correct, and you don't know that unless you know your numbers. And so it could be that the salespeople are going through a rut. It could be, and that you gotta constantly be managing and monitoring your closing. So if you start seeing dips in conversion, then okay, well, number one, you should always be doing sales training. So that's a given. You should always have your salespeople in sales training.
Yeah.
But then you should start looking, and because a lot of times what ends up happening is people have habits, and you might train them on something new, and you might have them doing a certain sales script, and all of a sudden they deviate back to their old ways. And
that's just natural. I mean, I think a lot of times salespeople, they get challenged, by somebody, and then so they pivot and decide, I'm going to change my, script or whatever, and then it doesn't work, right?
Correct. And if they were just stuck to it, and yes, there's going to be, every once in a while, you're going to get that client that's going to totally challenge your sales script, and you're going to be like, man, I shouldn't say that then. I should change it. And all of a sudden you change your whole thing, and it's going to perform.
Right. So something that we do, like Shawn said, always sales training, having your sales meetings to go over those things. I know that we go over calls just to, gauge like what's going on. How are they handling this lead? So it's important that you have your consistent sales meeting.
And something on that note that you and Brett are very good at is actually the sales calls. So auditing all your calls. So if you're big enough and you're able to, I would even hire a VA department that does audits, all their whatever title you give them, auditor, whatever, but they just go and they just listen to calls all days within your organization, and then you set metrics for what they're supposed to look for, and if they catch like issues or problems, then they escalate those to the manager for the manager to listen to that, and they can rate the calls and do all that. And then don't get me wrong, there's ones that we praise too. There's people in our organization that just have
I think that's important that you have to praise the good ones as well, because there's a ton of good ones that we here, and so we want to highlight those ones to our staff. But it's a good point. I think not just in sales, but for all departments. One thing that we didn't mention is we have our Thursday customer service roundups, where our entire organization comes together, and we kind of do a little customer service workshop, and every week is different, but there's times where we'll listen to calls, and we'll go through the call and say, what can we do better? What did we do good on? What can we improve on?
Yeah. I mean, so that's one thing we've done is just invested more time and money into coaching and training. And
it doesn't take that much money. It just takes time. You need somebody, you need to be consistent with it. Yeah. You can't just do it once and say, all right, that's good enough, right? I used to do it on a weekly basis. I would listen to a couple of my salespeople's calls and also my department calls and coach that way. Mm-hmm.
And Brett does a great job on the customer service roundup, and that's been huge. And some of those we listen to calls, some of those, it's a PowerPoint presentation on certain things. We brought in outside third-party people to do the customer service roundup, but it's customer service focused, but it's how can we elevate it? How can we do better? And sometimes they just talk about, we've had some employees run in, they've just talked about
exercising
and better nutrition and better sleep, which leads to better customer service because they're more alert, they're healthier, they feel better about themselves, and they come to work in a better state of mind, which leads to better customer service.
Absolutely.
So, along the lines of something else about knowing your numbers is to know your numbers as far as like you should know if you're making profit or not.
Right, your
in
cash
your
balances,
books,
absolutely.
I think we went a couple years where we just had bad books. We didn't have the right people on our team. We didn't have a third-party CPA auditing everything, and just internally it wasn't good, and our numbers weren't good. And so, it's very hard to run a business when you don't know how much you're spending, how much you're making, and so knowing your numbers, you should have those dialed in. And to my recommendation, if you're at a place that you're struggling marketing wise and marketing lead gen, and your books aren't in a good place, I know we're all wanting to grow and everything, but you might need to just like slow down, maybe have a very minimal year, but get all those worked out before you go spend a bunch of money and you don't know where it's going.
Right.
Because it's probably not going to get better. So you might need to slow down and have a year where you just reset and get the right, all
your processes together. And I agree.
So, but look at, are you making money or not? Cash balances. This is huge. I think you should always be monitoring how much cash, and at least have 3 months of operating and employee costs, at least in your business, so you can weather through those times, especially in the uncertainty of today. You look at your gross profit margins, you should know that number. And not only looking at the past, because a lot of times the P&L and everything just shows your past performance, but start looking at metrics that show your future.
Right.
What do you have coming up? What sales do you have generating coming up? And start looking at what your future numbers, because are those declining, going up? Are those margins changing? Are those all that? You should be looking at, because that's going to dictate your future. And if you try to anticipate to make movements or corrections ahead of time before looking at just the past, because the past might be too late. You might.
Right. How often do you recommend somebody to review their financials? Like once a month, or
at least monthly,
biweekly?
Monthly, yeah. And then some of the bigger ones maybe quarterly. But yes, and something I'm going to recommend when looking at all that is some couple books that I just read was Simple Numbers. It's Simple Numbers equals Big Profits or something like that, and Simple Numbers for Scaling Up. It's both by Greg Crabtree. He's a CPA, but wrote these books, and trust me, guys, like some of these numbers are like, I'm still learning, and so we're still just
you might have to read it a couple times.
Yeah, because he gets into things, but like he talks a lot about these, like, as far as the cash balances, numbers to track, gross margins, all this. And he relates it to different businesses. So whether you make widgets, whether you perform services, and he even has some metrics you should be for each one of those businesses. He looks at your labor efficiency ratio, and even gets it down into like management labor efficiency and direct labor efficiency. And these are all things that probably much larger companies, Fortune 500 companies monitor, but us on the smaller end businesses, we don't get into that. But it's not that hard to start tracking and start having your CPAs or your bookkeeper start getting these numbers for you, and if you can show them and set them up. And so it's a great book to read and get started in looking at that, because you can start making corrections and start monitor your business a little bit better and more quicker. And so the biggest thing is that you can make strategical moves, for the future. And
you might not be there right now. I mean, I think, and believe me, this is a lot. Like what we just covered is a lot, right? And you might be in different spots in your businesses. You might be starting out. You might be seasoned. The key is like taking a few of these points that we recommended and, implement them, right? Even if it's a daily huddle where you have your entire organization meet for the first 15 minutes. And even if you're just 3 of you
or 6 of you and you're all remote.
It's consistent. Just keep doing it consistent and be ready to grow. You don't have to take all these and start doing them. Just take a few of them, few small ones if you want to, and start implementing them in your company. That's what I recommended to a lot of the RPM franchises that were, struggling to put all this together. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I would just take at least a couple a quarter and just tackle those. And if you get them done right away, then add a couple more. But just start small. Don't get overwhelmed. Just take one or two and just keep
I'm getting overwhelmed just looking at this, but it's a lot. But no, the key is just getting started, right?
Yeah. So, and all of this is just things that we've learned over the years to help us stand out, help us separate us from the competition, and just to be a better business. We all want to be better so that, we can hire more, employ more people. We stay in business and keep offering, because look how many mouths we feed and people we help. And it's
pretty cool when somebody applies for a position, be like I want to work for you guys, because they see the company, the culture out there, and they're like, man, I want to be a part of this team. How many times have we got that recently? Which it feels pretty good. Yeah.
So we're doing something right. So, well, I hope that, you guys appreciated that. We dropped a ton. You probably need to listen to it a couple times. If you have questions or you want to know about one particular thing, maybe we can go into it deeper. So please give us some feedback if there's something you want us to dive into deeper. And maybe at some point we might take some of these apart. And we have on some podcasts taken some of these and even dived deeper into them. But if there's something you want to know, maybe we'll do mini series or something on this. But that was a lot.
Yes.
So I need to take a nap now or something. But I hope you have a great week, guys. Please share this. We love your feedback. Number one, we do this just to add value, to give back. And so if you're getting any feedback out of this or you're liking it, then please share it and rate us. It always helps to get 5 stars and help boost this so that we can share with more people. So have a great week.
See you next time, guys.
You've been listening to Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. Tons of entrepreneurial podcasts are out there. Talking. But Joni and Shawn are living it every single day. Their portfolio now includes many franchises and medium-sized businesses. We talk about the trials and motivators of successfully running a business. Join us again soon for another podcast. But until then, reach out on the website at InsideTheWolfsDen.com, on Facebook at Inside the Wolf's Den, on Instagram at Inside the Wolf Den. We'll see you again soon. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. We'll see you next time.